And before black was corrupted through a process, see the book Black Metaphors, black was not attached to all this bad stuff. So should we detach from black, which originally meant shiny and brilliant, or should we correct the definition of black back to its original definition? Which one would be easier? Okay, Kanisha, let's deal with the second part of the comment that you left. And so you're basically wanting to know if people should detach themselves from being black, or should they find some way to change the meaning of black and get people to see black in another way, such as shiny or brilliant, of which you're saying is its original meaning. Okay, so let's first deal with the original meaning of black in the English language. And I use Etymonline, which shows the etymology or the development of the meaning of words. And so when we look at the word black, we see black as an adjective, meaning that it's describing something. And the Old English word black, meaning absolutely dark, absorbing all light, of the color of soot or coal, which are literal meanings. And then when we go down to where it says the same root produced Middle English Blake, pale, from Old English black, bright, shining, glittering, pale, which is what you're referring to, is what I'm assuming in this question. But the thing is that this is referring to a literal meaning, which is why it goes on to say the connecting notion being perhaps fire, bright, and burned, or perhaps absent of color, right? And so this is not applying bright in the figurative sense, right? As if someone is like a bright or intelligent person. This is applying it in the literal sense, as if the fire is so bright. So black was not used symbolically to represent a good thing, right? At least according to this source here. And I'm going to get that book that you have referenced, but this source here, which shows the history, it doesn't show that. But it was used as a figuratively or symbolic representation of all bad things, right? And so let's continue reading, because it's going to tie into whether or not you should continue calling yourself the name black or you should drop it, right? And so it says black was used of rich-skinned people in Old English. Now notice that it says here that it's used of people who have richer skin complexion, right? It doesn't say black was used of people who have black skin, because nobody has black skin. So right here, the English at this time, they're falsely describing people and they're falsely labeling people something that those people never agreed to be labeled as. And so look at what else was attached to the word black. The meaning, fierce, terrible, wicked, is from late 14th century. Now we're no longer dealing with a literal meaning of the word black. Now it has become symbolic, right? A symbol that stores other ideas of people who are fierce, terrible, or wicked, right? So if someone could say a person did a very black deed, right? That's how it was used at the same time that it was attached to people with rich brown skin. Understand? It says the figurative sense, often coming from the notion of without light, moral or spiritual, right? That's a figurative or a symbolic meaning. And what it's saying is that the person doesn't have any understanding, or that they're blinded in the spiritual or the moral sense, right? Those are black people, in other words, right? Watch this. The Latin Niger had many of the same figurative senses: gloomy, unlucky, bad, wicked, malicious, all which are lumped in with people who have brown skin, right? Who they labeled as black people. In English, it has been the color of sin and sorrow at least since the 13th century. So even before they applied this word to people with brown skin in the 14th century, it was already a negative thing in the 13th century. Now watch how this word developed over time. The sense of with dark purposes, malignant, emerged 1580s. And dark is another one of those words that's related to black, right? And it's teeming also with negative meanings, which is why we don't use it to describe our skin color, right? We don't use that word. It says dark purposes. Now, the thing is that a good or a bad thing? What clicks in your mind? You have to tell me. Malignant, meaning evil, that emerged in the 1580s. That means that it manifested and it came to life, right? Out of the depths. And then it became attached to black as one of the symbolic meanings, right? In the black art, necromancy, it's also the sense of black magic. Now, what happens if you go to the average person and you tell them that you're practicing black magic? What's going to be their automatic response? in their minds, you'd likely be looked at as someone that's evil or someone that is demonic, right? They may not have the slightest clue as to what it means of someone practicing black magic, but it's just from hearing the word black attached to it, that's how they'll categorize it, right? As something that's of the devil. And this happens automatically, right? Out of the conditioning of the Western culture. Let's keep going. Then we have black flag, flown especially by pirates as a signal of no mercy. It's from 1590s. Black dog, melancholy, is attested from 1826. And melancholy is basically like a sadness or a depression. Then we have black belt. Now, this is one of the words in here that has some type of positive meaning. When you read right here, it says, is attested from 1913 in the judo sense, worn by one who has attained a certain degree of high proficiency, right? And so this is one of the ones that does have some type of positive meaning in there. And you may be able to find a few other small ones, but they are minuscule in comparison to all of the negative ones and these large, massive negative ones that we've read already. Wickedness and all these other types of things. Black power is from 1966, associated with Stokely Carmichael. And this right here is important because this movement was the biggest opportunity. Understand, the biggest opportunity for blacks to change the meaning of black, right? And to redefine it into something positive. And to some extent, they tried to. They even had slogans like black is beautiful. But what they, along with the rest of the world, or at least the rest of the United States of America, eventually came to realize is that black people really didn't believe what it was that they were saying. Because during the same time, they started increasing gang activity, along with pimping, along with prostituting, right? And all the other things that align with the figurative meaning of black. The one very good thing that came as a result of the Black Power movement, natural hair, that thing even died out quickly, right? Going into the 1980s, all the way up until today, right? Where the majority of black women still do not like their natural hair, right? And they rush quickly to instill those same values of self-hate into the children that they have, right? And so the Black Power movement was the chance because it had a lot of people that were on board. They tried to convince themselves that black was beautiful, but when they kept using phrases like the black market or black magic to describe a negative and an evil thing, and then you turn around and call yourself a black person, then you trap yourself within the reality that you've created using your very own words, right? Your very own words. And even today, the word black has made further developments, right? And it's been developed further by black people themselves. They use the word to describe people who are ghetto, right? And when they say someone doesn't act black, or when they say a person is acting black, that means that they're sagging their pants, talking from the side of their mouth, using ebonics, right? They're unfaithful and so forth. When they say a person acts black, it doesn't mean that they're spending time learning, that they're taking care of their family, or they're being an honorable person, right? And we all know this, right? We got to stop playing like we don't know these things. We all know this.
Just want to record a little something for anybody who might have watched one of my TikToks and been surprised at how I speak versus how I look, okay? That's on you. That's your presumption to make. I will say this. I get a lot of from my own people for not being black enough, which is funny to me because that means that you think being black is like you got to be a certain way to be black, right? Literally just had a guy tell me essentially I'm betraying my race because I talk the way I do. How fucking ridiculous is that? Now, I'd be a liar if I said that didn't get to me, right? It does. But, hey, it is what it is.
Right? And so they're still tacking on meanings of black that work against them. Right? Today, they're doing that. So is it easier to make a whole bunch of people believe that black means something positive? Or is it just easier to detach from that identity altogether and prove that you can be something positive, right? To me, the answer is clear. And today, more than any other time in the past, people are more willing to call you by something other than that name, right? People are even reluctant today to call people black because they know that it's a derogatory vibe that's attached to it, right? And you also have to remember that today people are even willing to call men women and also women men, right? So if they're willing to do that, then they're most certainly willing to stop calling people black who are not even black in color, right? That's black in color. That's black, right? But people who are known as black people, they first have to desire it, right? And they have to raise their level of consciousness to a point where they can get above the black and white paradigm, right? We had to rise above it for ourselves. We had to reinvent ourselves culturally and then with our identity, right? We identify ourselves, like I said before, as Earpois, people of the free world, right? Because if you keep playing the role of a black person, then by default, you're on the losing side in the race game, right? Only pride will have someone continue to play a game that they can never win, right? And you can never win that game because of the way they have it set up. All the words and all the phrases and ideologies are meant to work against you, right? And the history shows from the past, even in the Black Power movement, they couldn't move against that tide to make it mean something else, right? They didn't believe it, right? And so hopefully you've got something out of this. Hopefully this has answered your question to some degree, right? And so I want to thank you for leaving it. And anyone else that has questions, make sure that you leave them down below, and we're going to answer some of the more relevant ones, okay? And so I want to thank you all for watching until the end. And my name is Brooklyn St. Michael. See you in the free world.